We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the HaltingWinter Podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Lyndsay Mitchell, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the City of Arlington, Texas. Oh, I know this is going to be one of my favorite podcasts. Lyndsay, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, you are one of my favorite follows on LinkedIn. I just love things that are exciting. I love watching cities do their thing, whether that's a growth or just new opportunities. And that's really what you have done for the City of Arlington. So I can't wait to dive into what's going on, not only there, but to really encourage the local government leaders listening today, whether you're a department head, a city, county manager, we all, I think, can be encouraged about the opportunities all around us. And that's the thing, for whether you're, I mentioned earlier, I got off a phone call this week with Luke Dyer, town manager up in Maine, small town, 2,000 people. And yet the things that they're doing are so cool and so inspiring. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to be huge Arlington, Texas to be able to attract cool things and do cool things. Anyone can do that if you just know who you are and and look for opportunities. And so I can't wait to dive into all that's going on and maybe the insights you have to share for people in local government. But before we do all that, before we unpack your professional career, let's do what we do here on the HaltingWinter Podcast. Take us back to the beginning, Lyndsay, and tell us about where you were born and kind of the childhood that shaped you.
Yeah. Well, I could go on forever about this, but I was born in Houston. And when I was 3, my parents decided that we should move to the Woodlands, Texas. And folks in Texas, and I think around the country, know the Woodlands pretty well. It's got a reputation, pretty well deserved. It is a very interesting place. And I think it was kind of the perfect place for me to grow up, considering the career I have now, because it really did shape a lot of my interests. And it was really living in an urban experiment. I mean, that's what the Woodlands was. So grew up there and all the way through high school, and then, went to Rice in Houston, so stayed local. And yeah, that was where I got started.
Okay, so tell us, walk us back. What was your parents' impetus to move to the Woodlands? What was kind of going through their mind? What did they do for a living? And kind of give us the influence that shaped your path.
Yes, exactly. So this was, the mid 80s. So about 1985 or so is when this was happening. And Houston was in the middle of what a lot of big urban cities were going through at the time, just a little bit of decline, right? And so they had a young kid and thought we need to get somewhere with good schools and a good place to raise a family. And so back then, that was the suburbs, and the Woodlands was kind of the preeminent suburb in the Houston area. So I think they chose that as the location. But it was really, kind of the education, I think, that really pushed them to move up there, which I do thank them for, because I think the education I was able to receive through public schools, I'm a big public education advocate, was fantastic. It was really a great place to be. So um, yeah, my parents were. My mom was basically a homemaker. My dad worked for kind of marketing and audiovisual stuff for a company that did work for the oil companies in Houston. So they would put together slideshows. Back when people didn't have PowerPoint yet. Um, they would do the slideshows for their development that they were going to do, meetings, pitches, that type of thing. So that's what they did.
So you kind of grew up. So I'd imagine your dad's kind of a storyteller, and so you have some influence there. Was local government? How did you have any awareness of local government growing up? Anyone who served, elected or volunteer?
No, I actually didn't. And what's funny is that I really didn't have any awareness of anything local government until the last year of college. And I'll get there, but back to kind of the Woodlands being an interesting place to grow up. Um, the Woodlands is not a city. It is unincorporated. It is a special management district. And so I did not grow up with knowing what I mean, I abstractly knew what a mayor was because I knew other towns had mayors. Like we didn't have a mayor though, so I just thought, well, okay, well, we just don't have one. And I wasn't really tuned into how the Woodlands was being governed, but I did pay really close attention to what development was happening there, and then also just local goings on. I was really into the local paper. I read it all the time as a kid. I was one of those weird kids who would write letters to the editor about like traffic problems and stuff when I was 11, that kind of thing. And I loved just learning about the community. I loved learning who the people were, what they were doing, who's doing what in business, who's, this person in the HOA, that kind of thing. Just a little bit of a busybody, but just really interested in that level of stuff. And another thing about the Woodlands that I think kind of shaped what I eventually went into it for a career was I was really interested in the physical development of the Woodlands. Um, they had a sales information center, just like, because it's a master plan community, 40 plus, 40,000 acres or so. Um, and they had a sales center. Again, this was late 80s or so. And they had this fantastic map, 3D model, right, of the entire Woodlands with little streets and trees and buildings, and you could press a button and things would light up and it would show you different neighborhoods and different village centers and all this stuff that they were planning. And I loved that thing. And I would ask my dad, like, hey, let's go ride our bikes out to the information center so I can look at the map. Like, what 6-year-old does that, right? It's weird. But I like to learn a lot about how the Woodlands was developing. And it's a very interesting story. Anybody who's interested in urban development, city planning, all that really should read up about the Woodlands. I did my master's thesis on it in my program, my city planning program. Um, but it was just a fantastic place to grow up. Very unique development. It was intended to be a sustainable, environmentally conscious, almost utopia. That's how the developer wanted to plan it, and it was a legacy project for him. He was really into it. It wasn't one of these quick things where you develop something really fast and then get out. He was in it from the late 60s all the way to 1997. They had holdings in the community. So really interesting place to grow up. Bike paths everywhere. So everything was connected. You could walk or bike everywhere. And I did. So growing up in that kind of an environment, I thought that was normal. I thought there's everybody just rides their bike everywhere down these paths through the woods, these serene paths, and connect all the neighborhoods. And you can go to all the different community pools and parks, and it just had everything. And I thought that's how everywhere was. Then I got out.
It's so interesting to hear, like, again, the little things, these the map that you interact with, it shapes you, and just kind of, obviously we're going to get to Rice, and your undergrad is in art history and architectural studies, and that makes me think, I wonder if I've been I resonate with much of what you said, those interests. I think I kind of I was never into the nuts and bolts of like heavy architecture, but city planning, if I would have known city planning would have existed, I think I would have been so intrigued with that, because I
Yeah,
love that. I just remember flying into Dubai once, and Dubai is just the most perfect laid out city because it's so new, and just everything is just, it's like you fly into it, and it's like all the lights are perfect, the perfect grid. I'm like, who could ever get lost here? And yet then you think of like San Francisco, and like I remember trying to find a restaurant once in San Francisco, and I think, and that's why I'm bald. I pulled out every follicle of hair, just like, it's just interesting, planning and the development. And like you say, when you grow up in a place that has so much intention to it, you take it for granted. You're like, and then you go to someone that doesn't have intention, or it's
exactly.
older and it's had to readapt, and you're like, what in the world's going on here? Well,
Mhm.
what did that? What is it now? Is it still a special district? Does it
It
have a city council? What is it?
Yeah, it is such a fascinating case study, seriously, for anybody who's in city planning or local government in general, because they fought incorporation from Houston for years and years and years. And Houston was always trying to, oh, we need to incorporate them. Let's annex whatever. And the Woodlands was no, no, not at all. And part of that is because even though the intention of the developer, George Mitchell, no relation, but um, his intention was for this community to be uh, diverse incomes, just with some place for everybody, affordable housing, and all through the scale, environmental sustainability, all that. That's what he dreamed of. Um, Achieved a lot of it, but one thing that probably wasn't too successful was maintaining that diversity of income. So the Woodlands is one of the most affluent places in Texas. They have that reputation, and it's because of the way it was developed. Frankly, everybody loves it. It's like a utopia, nice place to be. So driving property values up, and those people at the higher end of the income scale are going to fight things like incorporation, right? They have the ability, the education, the drive, et cetera, to organize around that concept and go after it. So years and years of fighting. You'd read about it in the papers. What they have finally landed on, they are a town, I think. So I need to go back and refresh my memory a little bit. I think pretty recently they did incorporate into a town, but that was after years of being this special management district. So at this point, I do think they have either a board or maybe a council of some kind. But they are in their infancy in terms of that kind of governance. So it's really interesting to just see what they're doing.
So fascinating. That's why I love local government. Is again, from state to state, city to city, everyone. It's like Book of Judges. People kind of doing it their own way, and so it's such a fascinating landscape. So tell us about Rice. When you go to Rice, what did you think you were going to study? You mentioned that you didn't really know local government until your last year. Did you think going in that you were going to study, that you were going to do? What was that? What was that experience like at Rice?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, going through school, I was always a high achiever, blah blah, AP classes, whatever. I was a nerd. I studied a lot of languages. So I studied Spanish, Latin. I was the Latin club president in high school, that type of thing. So, and I knew I love the liberal arts side. I'm definitely not really a math and science person. So, I thought, okay, if I'm going to college, I'm going to study anthropology or linguistics or something like that, just because those are the things that I'm interested in. Art history too. I always had an interest in that. So that's going into college. That's kind of what I thought. I wasn't sure career wise where that would lead, obviously, but I was just like, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. And also all the way through school, yeah, Texas, in my opinion, not really good with the civics education. It is not, government is not something that is focused on a curriculum. And so I think I got all the way through high school with maybe 6 weeks of a government class. So I just know nothing about that kind of stuff. So no idea that city planning is an option, or a career or a field. No idea that local governments have people working for them. I mean, obviously, if you think about it, you have to, but I never thought about it. So I went into Rice. I think started as a anthropology major, switched to linguistics. And then I think toward the end of my freshman year, I thought, you know what? I love the built environment. Um, and I love, how places are put together and how things are designed and all that. So architecture, I want to be an architect. So I just kind of decided I'll transfer into the architecture program, which is not something you just decide to do at Rice. It's a whole process. You gotta apply to the architecture school. They have to accept you, all this stuff. But I did, and they did accept me. So I went into the architecture program as a sophomore with a freshman group who was coming in from high school. So I was, I'd already been there a year doing something else. And so I was kind of a little bit of an odd one out. But I did the architecture program for 2 years and loved the hand drafting. I loved the model building, going to the wood shop and um, got real injured on a circular saw at one time, but loved all of that. Um, but we got to our junior year and it was time to kind of introduce the digital side of things. And this is like, 2002, 2003. Um, and so it's like, okay, architecture is not, we're not drafting and building models. That's not what people do in the real world so much. We do digital stuff. And the professor, I think on the first day, threw us into this project that was like, use Maya, which is animation software, to design shelving for things that don't exist. And I said, nope, nope, I'm done. I'm done. I am not that impractical. I need something a little bit more reality based. Plus, I'm a bit of a Luddite and I don't really like this software and I don't want to learn it. So bye. So I got out of the program at that point and went, what am I going to do? Right. This whole time I was like, oh, I'm going to be an architect. What can I do now? So kind of had a little bit of a crisis moment, decided to just continue with an art history degree. I'd been, studying art history as a minor that whole time. So wound up with an art history degree, had to stay at Rice an extra semester just because I kept zigzagging all over the place and didn't finish a degree plan on time. And really, toward the end of my senior year, really started panicking because I was like, what am I going to do? I knew I wanted to get a master's degree, continue my education, but I had no clue career-wise what to do. And I forget how I got introduced to city planning exactly, but somehow I found that there were careers in this thing that wasn't architecture, but it was kind of like city building and development. I was like, wait a second, this has existed the whole time and it's a thing you can do. This is exactly what I've wanted to do forever. So I went to the National Planning Conference that year. It happened to be in San Antonio, Texas. So it just so happened. My life is kind of full of this. I'm like in the right place at the right time a lot. So it's 2006, National Planning Conferences in Texas. Oh, what's right there? I'm going to go. So just no, I'm not a student planning. I'm not a career person planning. I'll just go to this conference and see what it's like. So I did, and I was fascinated. I was just hooked. I was like, yep, this is for me. And at that conference, I happened to meet a person from the North Central Texas Council of Governments who was hiring. And we were in a session together. And it was a collaborative session where we got into a group and we're working on some stuff. And so he said, we're hiring. And I heard you said you just graduated from Rice. You want to interview with us? Because I'd like to talk to you about that. And so that kind of set my path right into the career that I have had to this day.
Oh, I love it. Okay, a couple things. First, I love that your story, even at Rice, is kind of ping pong, or kind of you're trying to figure it out. And I think that's where there's just a lot of pressure on young people to already have it figured out, even before they get to college. And if they're in college and they're in a path, it's like, I got to stay in the path. And so I love hearing this, that it wasn't perfectly laid out for you and it didn't really align. Even at Rice, it was at this conference outside of Rice where you meet someone. And I just say that if you're a young person, the best encouragement you'll find both in what you just shared and all the stories I share are network. Just go to things, meet people. You have no idea, right? The error of youth is that we think we know things, and it's like you don't know anything. And so go meet people and see and test. Now your 20s are the best period of your life to just test things and try it and experiment, because you can't fail. You're just learning. Look, you can't. Learning's not the failure is not doing anything, right? And
Right.
so
Yeah.
go do it. I love this. It's funny. You mentioned Rice, and 2002, 2003. I was in New York, and I met the conductor, orchestral conductor who led. He was actually the director of the Rice. Was it called the Shepherd School of Music? I think that's what it was called.
The Shepherd School.
And I almost transferred to Rice. He was such an influential conductor to me, just an incredible person. Rice University. What a great school. And in Houston, that sounded a little too humid for me. But so you graduate all of a sudden, and you end up working. That's your first kind of job here, transportation planner for the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Tell us about what it's like then to all of a sudden you get this job, and now you're kind of, it doesn't sound like you really knew about planning in that sense in local government. What was it like to all of a sudden be working at it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because looking back on it, I'm actually really proud of myself for taking that risk and that leap, because back then in particular, that was a huge thing for me to do. I was a very shy person, very kind of just not wanting to talk to people, just really timid in that way, very routine oriented. I'd been in Houston my whole life. It's like, well, can I move? Can I move up to the DFW area and really do this on my own? That kind of a thing. And I did. And I think it's because even with as socially kind of withdrawn as I was, particularly at that time, um, I've always been opportunistic. Like, I want to say yes because I just want to see where this takes me. So the fact that I was able to meet, it's Mike Sims. He's actually the city manager in Aledo now. He was in Terrell, Texas for a long time. But he was the person who invited me to interview with the Council of Governments. Yeah, fresh out of college, right? With just this degree in art history and architectural studies, and you're going to be like, yeah, sure, come be a planner. Why not? Right? And so it's I love that he in particular, he's one of the several people in my career that has really had a profound effect on where I've ended up. His willingness to take a risk and be like, you know what? You went to Rice, you've done all these things. You sound like you're probably a capable person with a good head on your shoulders who could learn some stuff, good raw material. So yeah, we'll take you. We'll take a risk on you, and you can come learn this. So I did. I was 23, moved up here on my own. Started this job board. Yeah, I know nothing about anything. I'm having to learn this region. Brand new to the DFW area. I had never even been up here. In fact, I think as a kid, I maybe heard of Arlington one time, and it was because it was in a brochure about Six Flags. And I was like, oh, there's a Six Flags here in Texas, because we had Astroworld in Houston. And I was like, oh, they have something like that up there in Arlington. What's that? So I just knew nothing about the area up here. So when I came to the Council of Governments, and I will say our council of governments here, one of the best run in the state, I think in the country, particularly on the transportation side. Michael Morris, the director there, is very well known as an innovator in transportation planning and funding. So just the fact that I ended up here, that was a place I ended up, is just a kind of a stroke of luck in a way that I'm very grateful for. But the council of government, it was a fantastic place for a new person to the industry to learn. And I think they really had a culture there of bringing people in, young college graduates, and getting them started. And they were great about training. They were, yes, this is how local governments work. This is what we're doing. This is a regional transportation council meeting. These are the processes that we do. You're expected to dress formally for these meetings with these elected representatives, like this, just teaching you what to do, because how else would you know how to act and how to be? And so just everything I learned there about, and the council of governments, I think probably most people who are listening to this would know what those are, but kind of regional consortium of governments that does a variety of functions. I was in the transportation planning piece. So we were the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for this area, taking federal funding and distributing it to governments, tech dot, et cetera, here. So being able to learn everything about how transportation works, how transportation funding works, what the different local governments are, what their politics are like, how they're structured, um, was just an excellent foundation for getting into this region, learning what this region was about politically, um, and just learning some of the industry, what this is, right? So.
There's something genuinely exciting happening in local government right now. I'm seeing cities and counties use artificial intelligence in some genuinely impressive ways, both inside their organizations and out in their communities. What stands out is how practical these tools have become. It's less about headlines and it's more about really helping people do their jobs with a little more ease and a bit more focus. And that's what I appreciate about Tyler Technologies and their unique approach to AI. They're helping organizations like yours remove friction, taking repetitive, time-draining tasks off your staff plates, improving how residents engage with their local government, and giving teams more space to focus on the work only humans can and should be doing. There's no hype. There's no shortcuts. It's just helpful solutions built for the realities of local government. If you're headed to the National Association of Counties Legislative Conference, I want to encourage you to take a few minutes to connect with the Tyler team and hear real examples from counties across the country using AI in helpful, practical ways. If you're not heading to DC, you can explore Tyler's free plain language AI resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. Again, free downloads, free tools, just amazing insights to help you truly understand artificial intelligence in a way that's practical and helpful for your specific local government context. tylertech.com/winter. Now, back to the conversation. I love that. And I love, too, that you've highlighted again, one of the things I think is fascinating and encouraging about local government is that there is training on the job. Like, I think that, the reality is there really isn't. MPA degrees are so broad. A poli-sci degree is like the broadest degree ever. Like, I think a lot of young people could disqualify themselves from local government. And one of the things I have, like, even in looking at your resume, some of the titles we use sometimes are so laborious that I think they scare people away to go, oh, that sounds like someone who needs to be a rocket scientist for NASA. Like, I can't do whatever that is. And it's like, there is training to be had. And so don't disqualify yourself just because you don't have some specific degree that matches a title you may see on a management, an analyst. Or what is an analyst? Oh, that sounds important. Right. Just come in. Test. And so I love that, highlighting that. And so you work for the Council of Governments for a couple of years, and then you become a senior planner for the City of Arlington. What was it like then to actually work for the city? And maybe even back up and just give us, because I'm just fascinated. You'd lived in Houston your whole life. And when we think of Texas, again, we have a national audience here on the podcast. Texas is so ginormous. I just had Becky Wint Pearson. She's the municipal manager up in Alaska. And Alaska is ginormous. Yes. And it's just these two places are different. They could be countries to themselves. And so just because, a normal person can be like, she's been in Texas her whole life. When you moved from Houston to Arlington, what was it like? Was it like going to it, even though it's Texas, was it like a different country? What was a bit of the culture shock? And what was maybe some of that?
Yeah, no, that's a really fun question, actually, because I'd grown up, 23 years in the Houston area, very used to how things work down there, humidity, great food in Houston, was spoiled by that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But just and also Houston not having any zoning. It's crazy that I grew up in the place and I became a city planner. Not that I really went into zoning as my focus, but in the biggest city that has no zoning. And just how that worked. And how it works is that it actually develops just like any other city, honestly, with very few exceptions. So it's interesting how that naturally works out. But when I moved up here, there were a couple key differences. And I hope I'm not going to offend anybody in the DFW area, but I would say this to their face, and I do. The people drive much slower in certain areas than I was used to in Houston. In Houston, the freeways are bumper to bumper and you're going 80 miles an hour. And that's how it is. Up here, the main road between Dallas and Fort Worth, I-30, people do 55 on. I was so confused. I was like, what is happening? Where do these people not have anywhere to go? So that was a culture shock to me. And then this is probably going to sound weird, but the sun is different up here. Um, the sun and the wind. So in Houston, again, humid climate, and I think the humidity often kind of made the sun just not, it diffused it a little bit so that it wasn't so bright. I get up here and you're facing the west sun at the end of the day, you're blinded, completely blinded. And that's not, I just not experienced that before. So I'd be driving home from work and I suddenly couldn't see anything. And it was terrifying. And it's like, I talk to other people who've lived here and they go, oh yeah, yeah. It's just really bright. And also much windier than I was used to. And the food's worse. I'm sorry, but I really miss the food in Houston. So I'll never get over that. But of course, I've been up in Arlington now almost 20 years. And so this is clearly my home and I've adopted it and love it. So yeah.
I was going to say it must be something because you've been at the City of Arlington since you took this senior planning position back in 2008. So now walk us through all these senior planner, principal planner. Well, maybe take us through just that before you become a kind of a part of the strategic initiatives team. What was it like then working specifically for one city? And when you became a planner in 2008, I'm trying to remember. I think 2000, if I have my notes right, I think the population of Arlington was around 330,000. As of, you just crested 400,000. So again, it's a growing city. That whole area is just exploding. What has it been? What's it like to do planning for one city and in growth and in a city that has multiple things? I had Kevin Phelps on. He just retired, city manager of Glendale, Arizona. And Glendale, under his leadership, it was bankrupt basically. And he came in and again, through kind of what you do, strategic initiative, that place just blew up. It brought in the Arizona Cardinals, right? All kinds of things. And Arlington seems to be one of those cities. I think of sports teams. I think of the Six Flags. Like it's got things going on. And so tell us about what it's like to plan for a city with that much, I think of chaos. But
Yeah. It's interesting. So again, kind of one of these opportunity things where one of my bosses at the Council of Governments, her name's Alicia Winklebleck. She actually still works for the City of Arlington with me. She got recruited over to the City of Arlington to become their first transportation manager. Up until that point, they hadn't had any area of the city that was focused on transportation planning. They had, Public Works is building the streets and stuff like that. And they had the planning department. It's focused on, development and getting things done that way, but not on transportation planning. So they wanted to focus on that a little bit more. So they hired her over and she immediately recruited me. As soon as she got a position in her budget the next fiscal year, she said, I know who I want to hire, and came and recruited me over to the city. And again, it's one of these things where I was like, well, sure, I'm going to see where this takes me. Why not? I already live in Arlington. The Council of Governments is based here in Arlington. I lived in Arlington. It's right down the street. My commute's not going to be any different. It was a huge bump in pay, so that helped a lot too. And so it was a pretty easy decision for me to just make the hop over to the city. And then I had to learn city government, which is very different than regional government, right? So the regional level, you're not getting into all of the things that really constrain and define local government practices. So coming into the city, it was like, what is going on? This is how council meetings work. We're with ordinances, resolutions. What is all this stuff? So, just kind of hit the ground running and learned everything I possibly could, which is another big thing for me, is just kind of what you were saying earlier about just diving in, just get in there and start doing stuff. Start just observe everything you can, ask questions, follow up on things, say yes to things as much as possible. Like if you're being given an opportunity to work on a project, take it. Because you don't know where that's going to go. It's probably going to go somewhere positive for you. So, um, yeah, I came in, I was doing that, um, really focused again more on the transportation planning side. So we were like, trying to design a hike and bike system and working on our thoroughfare development plan and how roads are going to work. And then also the big issue in Arlington, mass transit and the lack thereof. So that was also something that we were trying to address. Um, and so it was exciting. It was a great place to get started in local government. And then over time, my focus shifted out of transportation planning and then kind of took a little bit of a different path from there. So
Oh, all right. Well, tell us about it. What was the difference? Well, let me ask one thing first before we get into that, because I think it's again, I'm just so curious. Transportation. And when I think about Dallas and the whole area, I just think about sprawl. If you've been to
Yep.
Dallas, it's just kind of, it goes on forever. And
Yep.
so it would seem like, when I think about where I live right now, Olympia, the capital city of Washington, it has mass transit because it's easy. It's just, this little grid, it kind of, the bus goes around and around. And when you've got that much sprawl, people don't realize, like, especially for like buses and things, like you're talking about just the fleet it would take to get people to where, or if their bus rides would be hours long, because it's just it's such a larger footprint. I would imagine that's what I assume. Talk to us about what were some of the challenges of trying to create public transportation in all its fields. But bus is just one aspect. But what are some of the unique challenges for Arlington in that?
Yeah, excellent question. The city's been wrestling with this for 30 plus years. But you're right. DFW is kind of the definition of sprawl. We have no natural constraints around us, no mountains, no beaches, nothing. It's just land as far as you can go. And that's exactly what people continue to do, keep going. And, as trained as an urban planner, thinking about how that is and not sustainable that is, and how we really probably should have taken a different approach. But we are where we are up here, and the development pattern is what it is. And so you are trying to work within that constraint, really, of the sprawl and just how things are so spread out. It is very auto centric. Um, and so, yeah, connecting point to point. Yeah, Arlington is 99 square miles, and we're kind of north south oriented. So getting from North Arlington to South Arlington is, it can take you 40 minutes in a car to do that. So it's hard. It's hard to do mass transit well, just even from a functional logistical perspective, not even taking into account the funding side of things, which is very complex. Um, and Arlington is not part of the transportation authority. We never have been. There are three in the region. And we have had elections to join usually DART, transportation authority in the area, but those have been voted down by our citizens. All three different elections voted down all three times. The Arlington wanted to be what it is, which is a suburban kind of feel community, at least back then for sure. Um, and so that's where we're. And so the city doesn't have alternative sources of funding, beyond dedicating a portion of sales tax to kind of do this sort of thing. So we have to kind of address the problem in a different way. So we became, I think, very innovative in just trying different things. Again, it's let's try it. Let's have a creative idea and try some different things. So what we wound up doing eventually was kind of starting an on-demand system. So essentially like public Uber in a way. That's really how it operates. And it started with a small area of the city, and it is subsidized, so it's cheaper than Uber, Lyft, all that. And then we expanded it from there. And today it covers the entire city. So you can get everywhere in Arlington and up to DFW Airport using this service, which is, kind of non-traditional public transit. And that's how we've addressed the solution. Is it perfect? No, but nothing is. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than trying to do it kind of the the bus fleet way, the transportation authority way, or certainly like light rail, that kind of thing. I mean, those are $50 million a mile. We don't have that kind of ability to spend like that. So, yeah, it's been challenging, but we've been able to address it in a really innovative way. And I think since we've done that, a lot of other cities have caught on and have started trying it themselves and like, oh, yeah, okay, this is a pretty good solution. So, yeah.
It's so fascinating. Well, already you're kind of doing the innovation. You have to think outside the box because there's not a lot of, there probably were no other cities the size and scope of Arlington that are trying to deal with those unique variables in that context. I think that's one of the beauties of local government is there is no standard operating procedures. And so you do need to kind of be in groups and share, be a part of the organizations. They're sharing best practices, but you also have to go at the end of the day, maybe there's no one like us. And so we got to create our own path forward. And so that's super
Exactly.
cool. What was the next stop then in what the path was, what you were interested, what you were kind of focused on?
Yeah. So it's kind of from the transportation planning focused stuff. Our group was part of the overall planning department, which covers your standard zoning and platting and all that development related planning. It also covers long range and more strategic planning, comprehensive planning, that kind of thing. That's the team I was more associated with, was the long range comprehensive, transportation planning kind of fit in with that because we got the long view of what needs to happen in the city. So I kind of morphed away a little bit from the transportation planning and went more into this longer range planning, with corridor studies and the downtown, like the downtown master plan. I was able to do that, and that type of thing. At the same time that I was working in kind of this long range planning mode, I was also being pulled off to to start working on some special projects, some special initiatives that the city was doing. And I think it was largely because I kind of earned the trust and respect of the folks in the organization leadership as someone who could get stuff done, and could put things together, could tell a story well, could make the connections, could write well, that and keep things moving. So I got brought in on some really exciting projects, and it kind of more in the economic development world, which I have no formal background in or training in. It was just sort of like, well, you're competent and capable, so yeah, we're going to add you to this team, which is a very local government thing to do. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can do stuff, so you can do it all. Why not? So I was able to kind of simultaneously work in the long range planning world as well as the economic development world, and kind of getting to see both sides of that. And then from there, went more and more into economic development, special projects, major initiatives, that type of thing, and kind of really changed my perspective a little bit about planning and how it works, how it operates, the value of it, particularly for cities like Arlington, who are relatively built out. And so now I focus more on the economic development side of things, for the most part. So it's just been this winding path of kind of doing different things and seeing where it takes me, which I'm still doing.
Are you there?
Yes, yes, I think we're back.
So there's my I know. So yeah, the winding path. So tell me about my my initial thought as you share that. My assumption is that it's kind of when you're in planning, especially long-term planning, it can kind of be like dream world. It can be like anything's possible. But all of a sudden, when you start to go, well, how are we going to pay for it? And how's
Yeah,
that? That's why I love local government, especially if you are, there's a lot of talk nowadays about, autism, everyone's on the spectrum, OCD. And I think government's the perfect place for it because you got all these kind of things you have to think about. In fact, I just talked to someone the other day about the reality of, especially city manager. I deal with a lot of city managers and they feel a lot of pressure to all, like they're just bombarded constantly with ideas and this is what needs to happen. And I always tell them, you really need to know your priorities, but you have to be able to default to an immediate kind of a no, not yet, meaning I got to think about that. Like that should be the default, because really in anyone in leadership of a municipality in whatever department area, because the thing you could say yes to has so many consequences in so many different areas. And that's where all of a sudden the economic development is like, oh, wow, that's right. Okay. How are we creating the spaces for funding? What does that funding look like? And so what did that look like? Yeah. Again, now I love it again. You're just saying like, you didn't have any training in economic development and all of a sudden you're learning, you're on the fly. What was it like to learn about and just have more kind of awareness of all these things a city does?
Yeah, it's really been fascinating, and it has changed my perspective about how cities operate. Again, the kind of the value of planning, and then also kind of where I want to take my own career. So as I got more into the economic development thing, it was very valuable because I started learning a lot more about how commercial real estate development in particular actually works, which I think in planning, folks who are trained up in city planning, that is something that they are really, really missing. And I try to make that point to people who are designing curriculum for planning programs at this point. Not enough education about the financial world and how that really dictates a lot of what's going on in reality. Because you can make these plans that look really great and are great dreams and are ideal, and go out to the community and get community feedback about what they want. That's valuable to do, but at the end of the day, the market is really probably going to dictate what happens. And if you aren't realistic about that, kind of in denial about that, you aren't ever going to achieve your plans. And so I think I started to recognize how divorced planning, long-range planning really was from, frankly, reality, and how things actually got done. And I have such a bias toward action and being able to get things done and see them be achieved, that I started to get really frustrated with planning because it wasn't going anywhere. I would write these plans, and not that, most cities have plans that sit on the shelf. I think in Arlington, we actually do a pretty good job of implementing our plans, but it's still a lot of dreams that don't happen. Right. So I thought, well, you know what? The economic development stuff, more just the development in general, that's where things are really happening. And that's where I can work on a project that I'm going to see start turning dirt in a couple of years. So it just became kind of naturally more interesting to me, because it felt like there's more momentum here. So I just started leaning into that a little bit more. And I do think, again, that the planning world would be benefited by a little bit more realistic knowledge of the market and the constraints of just commercial development in general.
I want to take a quick moment to pause here, because there's something I hear over and over again as I talk to local government leaders from across the country. The work can often feel heavy. The expectations are high, and most days it can feel like you're carrying all that weight alone. That's why I created the Municipal Leadership Development Circle, or what we call the MLDC. The MLDC is a community of local government leaders from across North America who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of significant pressure, not just in theory, but in day-to-day practice. It's a place to think clearly, learn from others who truly understand your unique context and work, and to be reminded that you're not the only one navigating these unique challenges. If you're looking for connection, perspective, and a steady place to keep developing as a leader, I'd love for you to learn more. You can find details at HaltingWinter.com/MLDC. That's HaltingWinter.com/MLDC. Now, let's get back to the conversation. I love that. And like you say, that's one of the things we went through the book this week in our leadership development program called The Burnout Epidemic by Jennifer Moss. And in that, she says her big takeaway is burnout is more organizational. It's less personal. And it's usually the structures. And she says one of the things in an organization are these kind of like, it's these momentum, planning, dreaming things that people are a part of. And then the organization changes direction and people feel like, well, what was the point of that? I'm just a cog in a wheel. And I think local government is the worst of this because part of it is, you have elected officials that come in and now everything changes and direction changes or economics change. And so you do have to, it is a unique world where, not everything that you work on gets implemented because of so many variables. And yet probably needs, I love what you just said, there needs to be a little more responsibility taken to not waste people's time, to really go, how can we balance better long range planning, what has to be done on a city level for it to continue flourishing, but also right now, what are we doing now? How are we creating the momentum to actually do things that actually can happen and come to fruition? Because like you said, even the momentum projects right now are 2 years out. It's not like these, I think, it's not like, anyway, I was thinking Amazon, but even Amazon, like I was thinking my stepdad was a part of the, remember when Amazon, I think they just closed these stores you walk into, Amazon Go or something.
Yes.
They just closed, I think, the last one. He was a part of the team that built that out. But even that, it was like a year-long project. I mean, they were just like, when a private industry thinks of something, it's like, let's go, because we're losing money if we think this can make it. So in local government, that would have been a 25-year project.
Yeah.
And so when did you actually become a part of the strategic initiatives team? You become the manager, then the officer. Obviously, now you serve as the director. That seems like a department that kind of like, I think even on your LinkedIn profile, it says strategic initiatives, special projects, economic and community development, real estate, urban analytics. And then I read an article that said it's like the junk drawer for Arlington. It's like whatever we need to get done, do. Tell us about what that is and what that's been and what that looks like even right now on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, strategic initiatives evolved kind of out of the long range planning team, and I think it was because our city manager could see potential in both my boss at the time, Alicia, I already mentioned her, and myself in terms of being able to do kind of these larger special projects, bigger initiatives, politically sensitive stuff, risky things, and being able to pull those off. Correctly, successfully. So he developed the strategic initiatives group kind of specifically for us and the types of functions that we excelled at. Um, and so, I do call it probably pejoratively, and I should stop, the junk drawer of the city. I think somebody caught me one time. They're like, "You shouldn't say it's the junk drawer. You should say it's the cornucopia." I was like, "Okay, fine. Yes, that's a more positive spin on it, for sure." But it's a junk drawer in the sense of, so it's like components that just don't fit anywhere. Every local government is going to have things that functionally don't aren't a good fit in any other department, but they still need to get done. Um, and so it's a lot of that kind of the laundry list you just went through, these kind of random things that don't have another home, reside here. Um, and so, being able to work on all of these different things to me is very exciting. I've always loved that. And I think it's a lot of why I've stayed with Arlington so long, is because it's never boring. There's always something brand new to do, to learn, to figure out. It can be intimidating sometimes because it's like, okay, well, here's this project, go figure it out. Oh, okay. Sure, we'll do that. But then we always do. And it's like, wow, we pulled that off. That's great. So it's being able to work on all these different things and just have the kind of generalist knowledge of different topics, different subjects, how they work, what things are involved in them. I think is really beneficial, frankly, to like an overall city management type perspective. I mean, you've got to kind of know all these different components, right, to be able to run a city effectively. So, the group was designed kind of specifically for us to sort of do those types of things.
So I have two thoughts. The first is that in a city you have departments. One of the realities of a city is it has so much to do on its plate just to produce all the modern services that residents and people expect, right? And so sometimes it can sacrifice forward thinking because of the weight of today, especially like I think of like a city like Houston, when you have a hurricane or something crazy and then there's cleanup and you didn't play. It's not like you have the bandwidth. You're not planning for, whatever that is. I think of Jennifer Poirier in Clearwater right outside of Tampa there. And then they had this huge hurricane and just like multi-millions of dollars and all this cleanup and just public works. People don't realize, the LA fire, something happens and, there's national attention. And then there's years. I mean, they're still cleaning up after Katrina, right? And so it's just the weight of so it's kind of, I would think. So my first thing is a strategic initiative team might give you the ability to go, that's right. It keeps you in check to go, where are we going? Where are we heading? Let's not just get so bogged down in today that we forget about tomorrow, and tomorrow with a strategy, not just, well, we'll build the bike. We'll build the bike while we ride it. Is that the term?
Yeah.
The second thing you mentioned is that risk is, again, no one in local government likes risk because of the political environment and, whatever it is, like, oh, well, we need to be safe. We're stewarding tax dollars and we've got electeds and blah, 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 all the excuses. It seems like instead of the heat on the economic development team, you can kind of go, hey, the strategic initiatives team, which sounds like it can take more risk. It maybe failure's okay because they're just ideas. We're just the strategic initiative team. Is it kind of served in those two ways to be able to take some of the heat off of maybe a department, but also to keep things moving forward in like intentional strategy instead of just allowing a department to get in the weeds and not think about strategy? How has that helped the city of Arlington when, as you've seen over these years, to keep it actually a city flourishing for tomorrow?
Yeah. You make a good point about being able to put things that are a little bit more risky and to try them out and see how they go, stand things up. And yes, our group is intended in a lot of ways to serve those functions. And we have like, a new pilot program for something. We might kind of initiate the structure of that and kind of put it together and maybe, get it adopted through council, and then kind of lay the groundwork. And then hopefully if it, gets to an operational point, hand it off to another department who can then kind of run with it. We did that recently, actually, with our city cemetery. Very long story, but it's like, okay, we're going to figure out a cemetery now. Sure. Yeah. Let's go. We had to literally figure out where the bodies were buried, like do ground penetrating radar to figure out where the bodies are buried. But that aside, so yes, it does provide a place to put those types of efforts that are a little bit more strategic, require things to be nimble, and take a little bit of risk, that type of thing. But I think in general, actually, Arlington has a really great culture of just being like a can-do place. And I know I always post about that on LinkedIn, but it's because it's so true. The vibe here is just very like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And the community is unified in that kind of culture. And I love it. It's very exciting. So yeah, we're not about taking crazy amounts of risk and we're not going to be bad stewards of tax dollars. I can assure everyone we are very, very serious about that responsibility. But at the same time, just having the ability to say, yeah, let's try that. Let's go for that. Let's punch above our weight class, and figure it out. It's a very invigorating place to be. And I just feel really lucky that I essentially just landed here.
I love it. Well, you took a little hiatus. You became the interim executive director for the Arlington Economic Development Corporation. Tell us about that. And as you were in that, were you, it's always interesting when you've been in such a focused thing, right? You've been working for the city of Arlington for a while then. And so was there a temptation to go, oh, maybe there is something different. Maybe I'll go do something different. Or was it just like, no, we got to get back to it. Let's get back to strategy. What was that little bump like?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. I mentioned a little bit ago that, back even starting around probably 2012, 2013, I started getting into the economic development world here at Arlington and being exposed to how those projects are structured, negotiations, all of that on things like our major convention center and hotel, Globe Life Field. I was able to be in the room negotiating these deals on these major projects. I mean, what kind of career opportunity is that? It's amazing. And so I had always stayed connected to the economic development world, how that works, how that functions. I think my natural ability to drive things to a decision, drive them to a conclusion, make sure they're getting done, that serves economic development really well, just to make sure, things keep flowing. So I had been connected with the groups and strategic initiatives. Also, we work kind of hand in glove with our economic development teams. So I'm still very heavily involved in that to this day. Just supporting different elements of it. And so we had a situation where at the basically the same time, our EDC director and our internal city economic development director both left the organization. So it was like, oh gosh, we have kind of nobody at the helm of these major focus areas for the city. So again, because the strategic initiatives role is kind of nimble, agile, kind of move into whatever. And I had the subject matter background for economic development. It was kind of just like, well, guess what? You need to kind of step into this and try this hat for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, sure. I love doing the economic development stuff. So it was kind of a natural thing for me to just dive in and kind of keep things going because I've been working so closely with those groups anyway. Um, so yeah, it was a really good experience to just kind of be, just really get into it and be like, okay, this is how, the team is operating, and that type of thing. So definitely good experience.
Yeah, did it give you now that you're back and you're the director of strategic initiatives? Did it? I would imagine it even gave you deeper, even though you had worked with that area, you were familiar with economic, obviously development with your role. Whenever you get in the weeds of it, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm sure it's helped you now. It just seems like that's kind of one of the stories. One of the themes of your life is learning and continually learning information, being very curious, being very present, but also being very forward thinking. How do we take that and do something with it? You're a person of action. That's what I love about you. What did it look like? What was there? Maybe I'll ask this: was there any temptation during that to be like, oh, maybe I want to be more focused on one area instead of a strategic initiatives person? Kind of, because it seems like you're kind of like I don't know. Again, I'm not a huge soccer player, but I think I remember from when I was a kid playing soccer, there was like one person that was always the best person on the team. They just basically told run all over the field, the striker, rover, whatever they called him. It seems like that's kind of what you are. You're kind of like, you kind of go wherever the city needs to make sure that momentum is happening. How do we close the deals? How do we think about how economic is connecting to community development? Like, you're kind of an all around person making sure that momentum is happening. Was there any temptation to go, oh, maybe I do just want the comfort of staying in one place and becoming a specialist?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. And I think again, depending on when opportunities show up at that particular time, whether I'm going to make a decision one way or not, it's kind of like, well, evaluate something when it comes up. But I think yes. In fact, it's interesting. This past summer, I am pro Arlington, love Arlington, have no intention of leaving Arlington. Um, and I was reached out to by another city for a major role, which would have been an excellent opportunity. There's no question about it. Recruiter reached out and said, will you consider applying for this? Really think your skill set might be a fit? And I said, hey, I'm really happy in Arlington and I've got a great path here. There's nothing, to say that I can't, keep moving up here in Arlington. So I'm good. I don't really need to talk to anybody. But he convinced me I should at least go through the interview process. So, okay, I did. And I think there were three other candidates and there was supposed to be a first round of interviews and then a second round. They did the first round and the recruiter called me the same afternoon and he said, they're not doing a second round. They want you, period. And I said, okay. So, I had to really think hard about, is this an opportunity I should take or should I stay in Arlington and, keep on the path I'm on? I've built so much in this community. am really involved kind of externally in the community. I'm raising my family here. I live here. Arlington is my thing. I'm very much about living and working in the place, in one place, which I know city management is very divided on, whether you want to live in the community you work in or not. Um, but I'm a very pro live in the community because you can live and breathe it. And I think it just gives you a completely different perspective and just more appreciation. So it was a tough decision, honestly. But I had long talks with my city manager, who is a major mentor for me, very supportive of me, and ultimately decided that, I need to stay with Arlington and see where this journey is going because I've invested so much here. So when I went to the other city, to let them know that I was passing on the opportunity, I told the city manager, I hope you get this, but I'm never going to be able to care about another community the same way I care about Arlington. It's not really about the job for me, honestly. It's the place. And whether that's potentially limiting for my career, maybe it is. Maybe that's not the way to be, but that is how I am, honestly. So I'm not gonna deny it. And I think, they understood that. So um but it was an interesting experience. So yeah, kind of thinking about, well, should I take another opportunity or kind of stick with what I'm doing? And so I decided to stick with what I'm doing.
I love it. Well, it goes to, different people are wired differently. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's why, again, part of this podcast is to show all the different paths and journeys and kind of personalities and mindsets that make you successful. And I think some people I know city managers that are kind of change agents. They kind of go into cities knowing that they've never been any place longer than 3 to 4 years because they go in and cause righteous hell. And,
Yeah.
but that's what the city needs. It's been stuck in its ways. It needs like a firm hand to come in, shake it up, and kind of set it on a new path towards health. And I know others who, like I think of Bill Wagner. He's been in Arcola as the city administrator. He was the first, and he's been the only one, and he's been there for over 20 years, right? And he had a dynamic impact. And so I love that, but I resonate too with something you say, and I do think it is important in local government. I am more of the mindset that it's such missional work, and that's why I love local government. It is work for the people, by the people, of the people. Like, it's not, you can work for the state and do policy, but you don't really see that with your neighbors. Like, local government, when you do a economic development project, that's people in Arlington. They're going to work there, they're going to live there, they're going to experience that. And so it's so meaningful and purposeful because, again, in local government, they're not throwing parades for economic development. Right. They might throw,
Right.
First Thursday's business, but that's not for you. And no one sees really the work you do behind the scenes. So you have to find the intrinsic value. It's very missional. And so you have to be able to attach that, though, then to your work. And I think that's the beauty of, like you say, you've been in one place for a long time. I don't think you could. I can't wait to come down to Arlington and have you drive me around and just show me like everything that your hand has touched. And I think
Yes.
that you'd be just, I think that's healthy for local government people to remember that. Like, that city is existing and flourishing because of your impact. That's something you should take great pride in. And it also makes you kind of like a parent to it, right? You're like,
Oh
well,
yeah.
I can't leave
Yes.
this. Like, we're still
I
rocking and
know.
rolling. Well,
Yeah.
one day I hope to see you perhaps as the city manager of Arlington. They would be blessed to have you in that role, I think. Tell us about what, I want to be mindful of your time, but tell us about what's on the agenda. What do you see for Arlington? But even when you look out, again, you're a person of massive influence across the nation, I believe, in your role. What advice would you, or insights would you be giving to municipal leaders as they think about where cities are going? What are some of the challenges that you're facing, and what opportunities are you trying to lean into to create the future flourishing of a city like Arlington?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a wide-ranging question, and it's like, I don't know if I can come up with brilliance on the spot, but I think where I would focus first, I mean, there's so many challenges, funding challenges, political challenges, the state trying to take away, local control. All of those things are major, major issues. But one thing that give a lot of thought to a lot of the time is um, succession planning for these organizations. I am concerned about how cities of the future are going to operate with their workforces. Who is going to come and work for a city? People see how tough the job is, and how much, we get beat up on. And it's like, I don't want to deal with that, and especially for that kind of pay. Um, and so you really do have to be driven by purpose. Uh, I think about that in our organization and others is, are we building enough of a roster behind us to come up and to be able to do this job successfully with the same level of passion and interest and commitment to the job as I have and a lot of my peers at the city and in general have. So yeah, the employment challenge to me is concerning. Just getting even kids interested. That's actually a big thing for me is basic civics education. I go out to K through 12 schools every year and do presentations about local government to make sure kids of all grades know about these careers and that they are available. They're out there. Look at the cool stuff we do. It's right here in your city. You can do this too. And it's a very fulfilling job to try to just spark some interest so that we do have people who are continuing to want to go into this field. Because if we don't have quality staff, I'm terrified about what that might look like. To be able to operate these major organizations that are very complex. So that's one big challenge that it's like I don't necessarily have the answer for it, but it's like we got to be on top of this and just really try to cultivate leaders, get young people involved, make sure folks are interested and educated about what local government is doing.
Yeah, it's such a huge point, and it's the reason this podcast exists, right? And in fact, we're doing some behind the scenes work to create something we're calling the Halting Winter Tour, where we just go around the nation to high schools, to colleges, and just say, if you have a skill, a passion, and a desire to be impactful, there's a place for you in local government. And that's the beauty of local government. I mean, we got public works, we got emergency response, we got planners, we got scientists dealing with water, we got all kinds of cool things, and no one knows about it. And that's and it's exciting work too. That's why I love featuring your story. Is you're an exciting person, and you're there going, man, I love it. Like there's never a dull day. I get to be a part of all these cool things. And I think that's when people think about government, they think about, the state and federal, and they think about drama and, elected people. And again, I don't want to, crap on elected people. I think we need electeds too. But gosh, what you see on TV is reality TV. It's not real. It's weird. And it's not local government. Local government is radically different, I think, because again, it doesn't have the choice to be all, flip-floppy and statements. It's got work to do. It's got water to deliver, streets to, plow, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I'm excited about it. And I think that's where we got to get young people. Like you say, your story, you didn't even know, you had no idea it really existed. And that's the 90+% of the people I interview every week have no idea. They're in the same boat. And it's like, okay, well, we got to do better. And like you say, now cities are much more, a generation ago, cities weren't as complex. They're only getting more complex. They're only getting more responsible for everyday. I mean, think about it. If your water didn't flow and your toilet didn't flush, what would you do? Like, I don't know how to fix that. We are reliant on our cities, and they can't go bankrupt, and they can't go, unemployed. And so I think what you're saying is so important. How do we get back? How do we do things? Are you guys doing something in Arlington? One of the things that, we're going to do, we're starting this kind of cool virtual conference we call the Municipal 7, where we give 7 minutes to different local government people around the nation to share about what they're up to. One of the things we're going to do is citizen academies. How do we get citizens just to know like what your city does? Give them a tour of the public works plant, the water plant, et cetera. But also students, like student academies. How do we get students to come in and go, oh, not only am I learning what my local government does, but I might, I might want to do that. That sounds kind of like you said, if you would have known city planning existed, you might have went into your undergrad like, oh, let's focus on more. What can I do to maybe an internship or something there?
Exactly.
So are you guys doing something like that in Arlington with citizen academies or student engagement?
Yeah, we've had some different initiatives over the years. We probably about 20 or 30 years ago now, we did have kind of a traditional citizens academy. And we had to kind of drop that with funding challenges, staffing challenges, all of that. So we got away from that a little bit. But we have a couple of things going on. My group has a neighborhood leadership network, which we try to work with leaders in all the neighborhoods throughout town quarterly to just get conversations going about what is happening in the city and help people understand, so that we're sharing outward what the city's doing, what work we're accomplishing, and also hearing back what they think about it and how to talk to their neighbors about what's going on. So that's a little bit of that. We also, I'm really impressed, we have a new water director, fairly new to the city, and he has started a water utilities academy for citizens, and it's really just taking them around and explaining how our water distribution system works and how plants work and all of that. And that's another whole thing. Like, people never think about something as basic as water. You just turn on the tap and there it is, and you never think about how complicated it is to get clean water to you, right? It's a major system, and it's worth every penny we pay for it. And so I think he had his first class go through, I think last fall, and people were just raving about it. They were like, "This is fantastic! I learned so much, and now I have a much better appreciation of where my water rate is going to, and what these employees are doing, and how serious and educated the people are who work for water utility." A lot of people think city employees, they're just whoever, they're not serious jobs. No, they're very serious jobs, right? So, yeah,
Absolutely.
we need to do more of that kind of education of the citizenry for sure.
Well, like you say, it's a great point. Arlington's so huge; it'd probably be hard to do. This is academy would be an undergrad program.
Yeah, yeah,
By the time
yeah,
they could touch everything. So, but again, I love that. That's beautiful. Some departments taking it on themselves. And in Texas, water is a huge thing in Texas. Everyone kind of, whenever I interview a city manager in Texas, it's usually with water
yeah.
rights. And I knew, water rights, California, Colorado, Arizona. I mean, it's crazy. The world of
Yes,
water is intense, and
it
that is
is.
oh my gosh, it's been a whole podcast series on that. But I think, yeah, it's cool. I love hearing, what cities are trying to do. What are the challenges? Like you say, that's the issue. When budget gets tight, sometimes these are the programs that have to be
Yeah,
cut, sadly. And it's like, okay, well, what can we do? So love it. I'll wrap up with this because I want to be mindful of your time. You are a busy person. I can just I love meeting with excited people because I get there, I draw the energy, right? Let's go conquer some mountains. Let's go climb some Everest. And yet, uh, I always say to my big thing is burnout and just work life balance. I don't really believe there's such thing as balance. There's intention, and part of that is how do you take intention for yourself? How do you stay personally healthy so you have the energy to be dynamic and excited about the work that you're doing? What does Lyndsay do in her free time to recharge or reconnect? And how do you wrestle with that work life balance struggle?
yeah, yeah. That is actually a major challenge for me. And it is something that I am trying to get better about every day, not necessarily succeeding. I am a workaholic, but it is because I love what I do so much, right? And so it is hard for me to pull away and to take breaks. And I'll be honest, just this week, I had to take Monday off because I was too fatigued to get out of bed. I hit a wall. And I mean, I haven't done that in years. And so that's kind of signaling to me, obviously, yeah, you probably need to chill out a little bit, slow down. Uh, I typically am pretty good about trying to work out and make sure that I'm taking care of my body physically and all of that. I haven't been doing that as well lately, and I think that's contributed to this recent issue that I had. But it is a huge struggle. It really is. It's hard to do. And I'm a working mom, so I've got, kids and the whole family thing at home, and trying to divide the time and make sure that everybody gets enough attention. It is very, very difficult. So it's a interesting question to ask me this week, just based on, what's happening. But I am trying to get more focused on bringing a little bit more of that balance back. I love going to concerts. That's a big thing for me. Music, so having a little bit of fun outside of work, because work is fun, but it's like you can do fun things outside of work too, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah,
I love
it's
that.
hard.
Well, it is a challenge for anyone in leadership and anyone that loves what they do. And that's why I give a keynote on this. I'm about to give it for the Illinois City Management Association next week. And the first thing I say is we have to deal with shame, because again, there can be but the problem is like, well, that's why I don't like work-life balance. It sounds like a scale. And then it's like, well, I have to please people at work, or I have to please people at home. And it's like, you don't need to, like, it's not about pleasing. It's about you doing what you're called to do. And you are called to have a family, to raise those kids, to be awesome at work, but you can do that without shame. You just have to be intentional and say, like you said, Monday, you said, I'd love to be intentional to work. I can't today. I physically hit the wall. So guess what? There's no point of me, hiring someone to drag me to work to be worthless. What would that do? And so I think that's where it's the permission to go, hey, I got to take a day, and to recoup and to go, and like you just said, to be aware and go, I think I've probably been pushing too much. How do I pull back? It's okay to say no sometimes to work and say, hey, I'm not saying no to everything. I think that's when we feel like it's that servant leader. My keynote is called Balance is BS, but I say servant leadership sometimes can BS. And I know we all love servant leadership, and we all want to, but the problem with servant leadership, its dark side, is that you'll continually sacrifice yourself. You will sacrifice yourself on the altar of service and never take care of yourself because you feel guilty. Oh, I can't take a day. I can't go to the gym. I got to always be on. It's like, no. If you don't, you're going to be a short candle. Right. And so it's like, how do you give yourself permission to go, I got to reset the habits, got to get back in the gym, got to make sure I got a concert on the calendar. So I got some fun to look forward to. And that's the way it is, right? If we don't put it on the calendar, work, because it's so encompassing and because we love it, it will dominate. And so I have to be I got to be very intentional about putting things on my calendar to be able to step away and to enjoy the other aspects of life. So I hope I hope there's, when we think of Arlington, that's where the Texas Rangers play there, right? That's the big stadium.
Yeah, the Rangers and the Cowboys. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the AT&T Stadium, home of the Cowboys.
I forgot that's in Arlington. Yeah, I toured like the first, I think it was the year they put in the big TV. I came down there with a group of leaders. The executive leaders came through on some cohort thing, and they took us through that. It was really fascinating to walk through that because at the time, I don't know if they still do it, but they didn't have like any stores to buy merch. They would just have like merch up, and you kind of like Amazoned it or something that shipped it to your house. It was like this really fascinating kind of, how do you still make tons of sales, but not have stuff all over the place. Anyway, it was really fascinating. But yeah, I forgot that was there. Yeah. So you must have a ton of concerts then, people coming through.
We do. Yeah. The entertainment district is booked constantly. So it's really paying dividends for us. We're just seeing more and more activity, which is very exciting for us. So yeah.
Well, that's one of the wild things about Arlington, right? Multiple, again, it's like Seattle is the huge city, right, in Washington, and you are a Seattle. It's like, man, you got to deal with that, and your partners too. I'm sure there's partnerships with Dallas and Fort Worth, and trying to figure out how do we all live in this big ecosystem that continues to sprawl even bigger. So, Lyndsay, thanks for sharing so many good things. I could talk to you literally for an hour more. Anything else you want to share with us as we wrap?
I could not necessarily specifically, other than, I just really appreciate everybody who does local government work and want people to know this is an awesome career. You're making a big difference in your community and everybody else's. So yeah, congrats to everybody who chooses to do this as a career.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Oh, Lyndsay, thanks for sharing your life, your leadership journey, your insights. You got to go follow her on LinkedIn because it's so cool to see what you're up to. And I know that, you're a tank of wisdom. And so I'm sure there are other city managers, local government leaders that would be, that you would be able to give some incredible insights and how to, because that's the other thing too about your work. There's a lot of hoops, a lot of multiple threads that you're having to spin to create the tapestry of the future of Arlington. So you're just a great person to follow and a great person of insight. So looking forward to seeing your path. And again, one day, maybe you'll be the next city manager of Arlington. I think that would be I'm putting in the plug already for it, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's one of those things where it's like, we'll see where the path leads, right?
I love it. Well, thank you, Lyndsay, for sharing your time today.
Yes, thank you so much.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.